Are you learning CSS Basics for Beginners and want to know all about CSS Flexbox? Or maybe you're having trouble aligning your stuff and your content and items inside CSS Flexbox. If so, you're in the right place. Hi, Martin here from MDP Web Development. Today we'll be working on a project that we'll use as a reference project throughout the Web Development for Beginners playlist. Don't forget to check out the playlist from the start to get a better understanding of HTML and our reference project. It's updated each week with new videos. Be sure to stick around to the end to see how to get the project files on GitHub to use throughout this playlist. I'll link to important videos there also. There's a link in the description down below to the GitHub repository where all the source code is. Let's get started. Before we go on, be sure to watch the Visual Studio Code Editor video. It explains how to get and set up VS Code for use in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. And also watch the video on creating your first web page. I'll link to them in the description below. Here's a summary to get you started. First, create a folder on your desktop and call it Reference Project. Next, download and install Visual Studio Code Editor for your operating system from the link in the description. Open VS Code, then open this folder and create a new file called index.html. In the file content, type an exclamation mark and hit enter. This should create a new standard document for you. Open the file from the desktop folder and it should be a blank page as we have not put any content in it yet. If you get stuck, just watch these videos first. So what is CSS Flexbox? CSS Flexbox allows us to arrange items in rows or columns, like in a spreadsheet. It's very easy to use as an alternative to CSS positioning like floats for layouts. It can be difficult to get items to float left and float right, and top and bottom, and not to overlap each other or get confused when you use a mobile responsive device. CSS Flexbox is also supported in all modern browsers. First, we set the container class to display flex. Then we just specify row or column and how you want the contents arranged. You can say display flex, flex direction row, then everything's arranged in a row, or display flex, flex direction column, and everything goes straight top to bottom like in a column. So for this example, we're going to be looking at the examples.html file, the example css.css file, and in the example project on the right, you see you have to click on the examples button to see the examples page. Here's what we're going to be creating. We can see on the left here, inside the example CSS file, we have some classes. On the bottom, we have the HTML file, CSS Flexbox example. And on the right, you can see it on the examples page, we'll create that. You can see the H2, and then some items we have. So how's it going to work? Here we can see in the examples.html file, we're going to create a div. We're going to give it a class name of flex example container. That's just a box we want to put our stuff into. Then we can see flex column example. We're going to set it to the column layout. And inside that div, we have 3 items. We can see I've given each item 1, item 2, item 3. They all have the same class, flex example item. This is so that we can just, we'll say, set the background color to the class called flex example item. And then they'll all be that background color. We can see then on item 2, we have flex example item, and I've also got another class, flex align self. We'll see this later on. We can actually align an individual item whatever way we want. So in the CSS file, we can see here, flex example container. We just set the height to 400 pixels, width 100%, so we have a nice square box and give it a background color so we can see it easy. We can see flex example item inside that box just as a background color and a padding of 1 EM to fluff it out a small bit and make it look nice. So flex row example, we have to go, of course, display flex, flex direction row, as we've already seen. And we have justify content, space between. It's very important to get confused about space between, justify content, align items, and align content. To have a look at this slide. The alignment depends on how you've actually set it up. If you have flex direction row, then space between is a horizontal alignment, and align items is vertical alignment. If you have flex direction column, then space between is going to be vertical alignment, and align items is going to be horizontal alignment, as we can see here. This can be hard to get used to at the start, so just keep coming back to this example and do plenty of practice. We can see on the bottom then, the item number 2, we're just going to create a class called flex example, flex align self. We're going to align self to self start. Hi, before we move on, please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Thank you. So now we're going to open Visual Studio Code and our project, and a browser window on the right to preview our project. It's going to go to our desktop and double click on Visual Studio Code. Then we're going to go to the Explorer view and open folder. And mine is on the desktop, so I'm going to go Desktop, Reference Project, select Folder. And here we can see we have our HTML file. If we open the browser view, we can see the reference project folder and the index.html file we created. Now to see the browser window on the right, if you have the live server extension installed, you'll see Go Live button down here on the bottom. And if you haven't, you just have to go out to your desktop, open the folder, and click on the index.html file. So once you've clicked on that file, we're just going to click this Go Live button here. And that'll start up a new browser server window for us. So a handy shortcut for Windows to put something on the left and right is to press the Windows key and then right or left arrow and release the Windows key. Then select the one you want on the left or right. So I'll close this panel. So another handy shortcut for Windows is the zoom key. If you press CTRL, then the plus to zoom in and negative to zoom out. So we can see here we have our Windows browser on the right. So the only difference if we had to open this manually on the desktop and click on the file is if we make changes on the left in our code editor, you would have to click refresh on the right to see it. So here we can see we have VS Code on the left and we have our web browser on the right. And in VS Code on the top I have the example CSS.css file open. And on the bottom I have the examples.html file open. On the project window on the right, you can see if you just click on the examples page, you can see all the examples that we're doing there. In the HTML here on the left, I've just put in a comment that separates the code to make it look better and easier to find. CSS Flexbox example. And we can see here then I have HR for horizontal line, then just a H2 heading 2 with CSS Flexbox example in it. So let's get started. So let's first create a container. We're going to call this class Flex Example Container. So we're just going to create a div, div, and hit enter. We give this a class name of Flex Example Container. Flex-container. And inside this container then, once we have it set up, we're going to have 3 items. So we'll just create 3 divs with item 1, item 2, and item 3. And then the last one, div item 3. These are our 3 items inside our Flex container. So let's give these a Flex class. Well, a class so that we can actually do stuff with them and make them look nice. And we call this class Flex Example Item, because these are the items inside the container. So class equal to flex-example item. And I'm just going to pop this class into all three of them so that when we format that class, they all show the same. They all look the same. And we can see here on the right, in the Flexbox example, we have item 1, 2, and 3. Now let's just go up to the CSS now, and we'll have a look at the Flex container, because we can't see anything yet. So in our Flexbox example, remember we called our Flex container Flex example container. So let's create that class now so that we can visualize what it's going to look like. Flex-example container. And let's give this a height of 400 pixels. 400 px. Let's give it a width of 100% to go the full width of our screen. And of course we can't see it yet because there's no content or borders on it. So let's put a background color so that we can see it. And let's just pick any color here. And there we can see on the right now, we have a large box created. This is our Flex example container. Now we can see the items 1, 2, and 3 inside it. Now let's do something with the class we have on the items so we can see the items a bit better and they look nicer for our example. So if you look on the bottom here, in each item 1, 2, and 3, we've put in Flex example item class. So let's create that class now. So we're going to go dot to signify class and Flex example item. Now for each of these items, let's just set a different background color so we can see them easier. And don't forget, you might have to click Ctrl and S for saving your project or refreshing your browser window if you don't see the changes. Now let's put a bit of padding around them also. So we type in padding, hit enter, and we'll just say 1 EM. That's 1 times the default standard text size, which is set to 16 pixels. Now, so we can see now we have our Flexbox and our 3 items inside it, and 2 simple classes. How cool is that? So let's now create a class for Flex Row Example. We call it Flex Row Example. So if we see here on the bottom in the HTML, our container is called Flex Example Container. So it's a Flex container. Now let's specify that we want it to flex in the row direction. So we'll put in a class called Flex Row Example. Flex-row example. Now let's go up now and create that class. We'll just copy and paste it from here. Flex row example. This will tell our container to show everything in a flexible row. So a dot to signify class we're creating. Flex row example, open and close curly brackets. Now here's where it gets cool. Now we have to specify what way do we want this container, what do we want it to do. We want it to be a flex box, so we have to go display F for flex, display flex. Now you can see now on the right hand side, if you click save and refresh on your browser, it's actually changed the look of the container. You can see the items 1, 2, and 3 are on the left. Now it's a flexible container, great stuff. Now we want to specify the flex direction as row, because that's the example we're doing. So we're going to type in flex direction and just R for row. And you can see that's the default. Now here comes the fun part. We're going to justify content now I'd like them to be one left, one right, and one in the middle with lots of space between them. So if we have a look back at the screenshots from the thing before, we can see that justify content, if you're in row, is horizontal alignment. So let's just type in justify content. I'm going to type in, you can see all the options we have on the left. Let's just try space around. No, space between. We can see now if you click CTRL and save on your project or refresh in your browser, that our item 1, 2, and 3 have space between them. That's what it means in Flex. It's one left, one right, one in the middle, and all the available space is then between them. Now when we're in the row, align items is the vertical line. So how do I want these items aligned top to bottom? Well, I want them obviously not with one big tall blue line. I want them just to be an item that I created with the item 1, 2, and 3 inside it. So we're going to align items, and we'll say center. Compact them all into the center. And save on your project or refresh on your browser. We can see here now that in the row direction, justify content space between, has spaced them out nicely, and align items center, which means align top to bottom vertical, has made them nice and compacted into the middle from top to bottom. That's cool. So now let's work on a column example. So if I'm going to go down here, and I'm just going to change this class name from Flex Row Example to Flex Column Example. And save. And of course we see on the right it goes back to normal because we haven't created a Flex Column Example class yet. So I'm going to copy the Flex Column Example class name, and let's create it up here underneath the Flex Row Example. So dot to signify class and paste, open close curly brackets. So again we have to display Flex. And again it's now a Flexbox container. How cool is that? And this time instead of Flex Direction Row we want Flex Direction Column. So let's type in Flex Direction C for column. We can see now the items are actually stretched left to right and going down in a column, one underneath the other, item 1, item 2, and item 3. So for the next part of Flex Column example, we're going to go justify content space between, and let's see what that does now in the column layout. Space between. And we can see here now that space between has arranged them top to bottom with space between them because we're in the column layout. That's cool. Now what if we align items center? Let's see what that will do in the column layout. We can see they've all been aligned into the center, squashed together. How cool is that? So if you want to check and see the previous example, just go down here to the HTML, and instead of using Flex Column Example, just change that to Flex Row, and it'll swap back to use the Flex Row class we've created. Now let's just leave it on row for the minute. So now we're going to have a look at, well, what if you want one of these items to be aligned differently to all the rest of them? Let's pick on the HTML item number 2 in the bottom here. And inside it, beside Flex Example Item, let's create a new class called Flex Align Self. We can call these classes anything we want. Flex Align Self. Now let's go up to the CSS and let's try aligning self for item number 2. We can see on the right item number 2 is in the middle of the screen, and item 1 on the left and item 3 on the right. Now let's create that class. Just going to copy it from down here, Flex Align Self. So we're going to go up to the CSS file and dot for creating the class and paste, open and close curly brackets. So we're going to type in align self. And let's see what the options are. We have auto, which is default, baseline, which means a start in column direction, center, obviously center, and lots of other options. But usually what we use is flex end if you wanted to go all the way down to the bottom, or flex start. So let's just try flex start and see what that does. And we can see now, once you click CTRL and save on your project or refresh in your browser, on the right we can see item 2 that we put the flex align self on is actually aligned flex start, which means the start of the flex item. So what do you think will happen if we put in flex end instead of flex start in the class? There we can see item 2 has been pushed all the way down to the bottom of the Flexbox. How cool is that? So to get the files used in this example, the HTML reference project, just go to the GitHub link that's down in the description of this video. You can have a look at it here. So a GitHub repository is just a location on the internet hosted by a company called Git that most developers like to share or store their code in, either for their own use or to share with other developers. The repository on GitHub is just a folder used to store code or files, etc. Let's have a look at each folder. So when we're in the repository here, you can see the name of the repository there, actions along the top. You can see the main folder here, and there's a README file too. So if you want, you can just click onto the folders and see what's inside them and download the code from there. But to get all the code, you're going to go over here to the code button. We're going to click and download zip file. Once that's downloaded, go into your downloads folder. Then we need to extract it. So we're going to Windows, you're going to right click and extract all. Now let's just have a look at these files in VS Code. So we're going to go to our desktop. We're going to open up Visual Studio Code. And now we're going to open the folder that we just extracted. Open folder on the left. And we're going to go to Downloads. And here we are. And you can see here on the Explorer view on the left, there's the folder we can click to expand. And here's the reference project folder. And here's the HTML file, so we click on that, and there's the code. You can use this for reference or to rebuild your project if something goes wrong. Hi, I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. See you next time.